In part 3 of this video series on subprograms, we're going to just do a couple more examples of creating our own Delphi functions. In the previous video, we looked at what is the structure and how do we create our own functions. And today we're just going to do a couple more examples. So the example we're going to start off with is we're going to do a function called getMonth. For those of you who don't know, there is an ID number, a South African ID number, comprises of a whole bunch of numbers, and the first two digits in an ID number is the year you were born. So if you were born in 2001, your ID number's first two numbers would be 01. Okay. The second set of two digits, so digit 3 and 4, the second pair of digits would be the number of the month that you were born. So if your birth month is November, then digits 3 and 4 would be a 1 and a 1, which means 11. So if you were born in November 2001, it would be 01 for the year and 1, 1 or 11 for the month. And then the next two numbers after that would represent the day. So if you were born on the 20th of November 2001, it would be 01, 11, 2, 22, or what did we say? 20th, so 20. That would represent the day. So we're going to create a function that takes in an ID number, and although it's a whole bunch of numbers, we're going to take it in as a string because it's easier that way. So we're going to take in a string which represents an ID number or ID code, and it's going to send back a string representing the month. So when I mean a string, I mean the actual name of the month. So whatever month you were born in, it's going to send back you were born in November or whatever. So just the actual name of the month. So it's going to send back April or November and that. That's all it's going to send back. Okay, so that's what our function, or that's how we want our function to work. So let's get to the actual code. So if you remember from our previous video, we created a max3 function. This was an integer function because it returned an integer. We are now creating a string function because it's going to return a string. So remember our step one, we must declare our function. So I'm going to use the word function. We said we were going to call this function getMonth, and it needs a parameter, a string parameter that represents an ID number. So I'm going to call it SRD number. I'm going to use a descriptive variable name so that at least it can tell whoever's using the function what is the name of the variable. So it might give them a bit of a hint of what type of information it needs. It's always good to use descriptive variable names. And what type of variable is that? Well, that is going to be a string. Okay, so that's the information that the function needs. It needs an ID number. And with that ID number, it's going to try extract the numbers that represent the month and then send back whether it's January or February or March. So it's sending back a string. So we put a colon followed by the word string to indicate what type of answer is being sent back. This variable's got nothing to do with that. Just because this is a string doesn't mean this has to be a string. You could have a function that has an integer and returns a string. That's possible for that. This is just the information that it needs, and this is the information that's coming back. It doesn't always have to be the same type. So we have declared our function, step one. Now we've declared it correctly. What must we do? We must write the code. Now we must go down to the area where we write the code over here, but before we do that, we can use our special little combination there, Control Shift C, boom, and here you can see I'm at the place to write the code for my getMonth function. And remember, I said this is the input, this is the information that my function needs. So we must just believe that there's an ID number in there. We don't need to get it from anywhere, just believe that it's going to have something in it. Okay, so we can have some sort of value. I'm just going to write a comment here so you can see. So an ID number could be, for example, 011120 and then a whole bunch of other numbers, whatever. What's important to us is those two. Those two represent the year. Those two will always represent the month. We want to get that number, and if it's a 1, it must be January. If it's a 2, we must send back a February, that type of thing. So before I can send back a result, I'm going to first have to do some manipulation of this ID number and extract those two characters. So I'm actually going to create a variable called smonth of type string. We can call it of type string, and I'm going to use that variable to extract those two values, which I'm not saying that that's in ID number. It could be any ID number, but let's pretend that's what is inside a variable like that. Let's pretend. Okay, so how do I extract just those two little characters? Well, we can use our copy function. We're using a function in a function here, and we're going to copy from our input. We believe that there's a value in there. Just believe that there's something there. Copy from SRD number. You see, we haven't declared it here. We can just use that variable because it's a parameter. It's going to have something in it. Just use it. Believe that there's a value in it. Copy from it. We're starting at position 1, 2, 3. Starting at position 3 and copy for 2 characters. So in our variable smonth, we could have something that looks like a 01 or a 11 or a maybe it's a 09, maybe it is a 12 for December. That's what's going to be in smonth, something that looks like that. So now that I know that I've got just the month part separated, I can use an if statement. So if smonth is equal to the string 01, then we can send back the answer January. Now, how do we send it back? Well, we use the result variable. Now, remember, we don't need to declare result. It exists inside the function. What type of variable is it? Well, it's whatever we specify there. So we can send back the word Jan, for example. And that is all we need to do. And I'm going to do this for all the other months for my function to work. So I'm just going to go ahead and just do that code quickly for us. So to save time, I've done the rest of the code. As you can see, if the month isn't 02, it's February, 03, it's March. Now you could have done this a lot simpler with other, like a case statement or something like that. You could have done it a lot simpler, but you get the idea. And I've added a little extra feature. If it's none of those months, then we send back an ERR for like an error. Okay, so this is my function. Takes in an ID number. We believe that there's something going to be in there. And whatever it is, we extract the third and fourth character and check to see if whatever it is, and we send back a corresponding string which represents the name of that month. Okay, so we've created our code for our function. It doesn't mean that it does anything. It does nothing actually. None of that code runs because we haven't used the function. So let's now do our third step where we use the function. So I'm going to use getMonth. Let's say there are lots of occasions when I've got an ID number and I must extract find out what the month is. So let's say I'm going to make a variable called SID of type string, and I'm going to also have an smonth as my variable to get the answer. So let's say SID, let's give it some sort of ID. Let's give it an 06 and a 03, so they were born in March 21, and a whole bunch of other numbers. It doesn't matter what they are, and that must be some sort of string that we are going to put SID. Okay, now I'm going to use the getMonth function, but it's returning a string, so I must store the final answer in a string. So here I've got my smonth variable, which is going to store the answer. At the moment, it's got nothing in smonth, but when I allocate it to the getMonth function, it's going to open brackets. It needs an ID number or string. I could give it just a plain string, or I could give it a string variable. So I'm sending in this string into the getMonth function. So when it comes over here, SID number will actually look like that, and it will extract those two, find the 03, and it will send back the word March or MAR to smonth. So after this function is called, smonth will have a value in it that is the correct value, and then we can say show message you were born in the month of, and we can add smonth as our string variable. So we use our function, and then now S month will have some sort of value in it because it will have returned a result into S month. So let's see if that works. Get month. You were born in the month of March. That's correct. And if we change this to an 11, so they were then born in the month of November. And if we change our string, let's change it to a 16. So what month is 16? Well, no month, so therefore it'll say month of I don't know, there was a month, but there's the error. Okay, so there we go. So we've used our get month function. Let's do another example. Let's look at a prime or is prime function, a function that's going to tell me whether a number is a prime number or not. So that's going to take in an integer, some sort of number. Maybe it's a 7, maybe it's a 73, we don't know. And it will return a true or a false. It will return the true if the number is a prime number, and it will return a false if it's not a prime number. So if I put in the number 7 as an input, as a parameter, it will return the word true. If I put a 9 as a parameter, well, 9 is not a prime number, so it will return false. Okay, so let's get to the code for writing this function. So as you remember, step 1, we must declare our function. So I'm going to say the word function, followed by what we want to call it. I'm going to call it is prime. And it's going to take as input, what information does the is prime need? It needs the number that it needs to check if it's a prime number. So I'm going to give it a number of type integer. That's the parameter that it needs. It just needs one parameter. And what is it going to spit back or send back? It's going to send back a true or a false. So that's going to return a Boolean. So this is a Boolean function. So we've declared our function, and then I can go Control-Shift-C to get to the part where we write the code. So yeah, we're at the part where we get the code. So again, we believe that our number will have something in it. It could be a 7, it could be a 9, we don't know. So just remind ourselves, what is a prime number? A prime number is any number that only has two factors, or it only has one and itself as a factor. So we need to count all the factors. So we're going to loop from 1 till whatever that number is. Let's pretend it was 7. We're going to check 1. Is 1 a factor of 7? Is 2 a factor of 7? 3? Is 4? Is 5? Is 6? Is 7? We count all the factors, and in that case, only 1 and 7 were factors. So therefore, it's a prime number because it only has two factors. 9, however, has 1 as a factor, 2 no, 3 yes, 4 no, 5 no, 6 no, 7 no, 8 no, 9 yes. So 9 has 1, 3, and 9 as factors. Therefore, it is not a prime number because it hasn't got two factors. So for this to work, I'm going to have some sort of for loop variable. So I'm going to have an R variable, and I'm going to have to count all the factors. So let's do that. So I'm going to make those two as my variables inside my function. I can't get this from outside the program. I'm just going to use inside. I just need the number that they want me to check is a prime number. So what we're going to do is we are going to loop from 1 till whatever the number is that we are checking. So if we were checking the number 7, we would check all the numbers from 1 to 7. If we were checking the number 73, we would check all the numbers from 1 to 73 that are the factors. So we are going to go from 1 till our number. Again, we just believe that there's going to be a value in there. The user will give us that information. Just believe. And what am I doing in my for loop? Well, I'm checking if each one of these numbers, the R, the 1, the 2, the 3, if they are factors. So I'm checking if I divide R into that original number. Let's say if I take 1 into 7, 2 into 7, 3 into 7. If there is no remainder, remember mod returns whether what the remainder is. If I divide it into, if there's no remainder, it means it divides into it evenly. So if 1 goes into 7, if 2 goes into 7, if 3 goes into 7, if it goes into it evenly, in other words, there's no remainder, then I know that it's a factor. Then I must count that number because I've found a factor. So this count is counting the factors. But because we're increasing our count, we should probably initialize it, give it a starting value. Say we have no factors at the beginning, and then I'll check 1, 2, 3, 4. Once this loop has finished, once we have finished going through all the numbers from 1 to itself, we can then over here go, if our count is equal to a 2, then I know that it's a prime number. So now my result must equal, what are we sending back? We are sending back a Boolean. If our count is a 2, that means it is a prime number, so we're sending back true. Now be very careful of Boolean functions. You must cover both cases, when it's true and when it's false. So if count is equal to 2, we send back a true. If it's not, you must also cater for the case when it is false, and you must send back a false and a true whenever you use a Boolean, because it'll be different for each scenario. If it's a 7, it will count 2 factors, it will send back a true. If our number was a 9, it will count 3 factors, which means it'll send back a false. So this is my code for my isPrime function. Takes in a number, figures out how many factors there are, and sends back a true or a false if it's a prime number or not. Now you can start to see this is quite complicated. And imagine if we had to find prime numbers all over our program. Instead of having to write this code every single time, we can just call our isPrime function, and it will just use this code for whatever number we give it as a parameter. So we've minimized our code, and it's a lot easier to do error checking on this code. So step 1, right at the top, we declared our function. Then we wrote the code. Now, if you want to get to the code, a little trick, you can press Control and then it goes blue and click on the function name and you can get to the code, or you can click over here on the function name to get to your function, so you can get to the code. There we go. Now, step 3 is to use the function. So there's a button. I'm going to have a variable called rnum. I'll type integer, and I'm going to set rnum to a 7, which we know is a prime number. Now, because it's a Boolean function, we could put the answer into a Boolean variable, but most of the times you're going to use it in some sort of while loop or repeat loop or an if statement, something that uses criteria, uses Booleans. So I can say if is prime of, what do we need a number? So of rnum. If that equals true. So what is happening here is it's going to send back an answer. It's going to send back a true or a false. So although we don't have something equals isPrime, it's still returning a result that's being used in there. If isPrime equals true, you actually don't even need to put that part there. You can just isPrime rnum, and it will say if it's true or not. If it's true, then we can show message that is a prime number. Else, if isPrime is a false, which is the only other possibility, then we can show message. I'm just going to copy and paste it. Show message it is not a prime number. Okay, so we're happy with that. So we're using our function over there, takes in whatever value is there, sends it to our isPrime function, which is down here, calculates how many factors it's got. If it's 2, it'll send a true or a false, so it jumps back to here. It will send the answer true or false. If it's a true, it'll display that. If it's not, it'll display that. So let's run it and see how it works. So isPrime, we know we've used the number 7. isPrime, it is a prime number. And if I change that to a 9, and we run isPrime, it'll say it is not a prime number because 9 has 3 factors. So there we go. We've got our prime function. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you one more example. I'm not going to actually write the code for this function, but I just want to show you a special case when we have a function. Let's just call it getErrorMessage. And a special case when we've got 2 parameters, but they are different types. Let's pretend we've got a get function, a getErrorMessage function, and it takes in a string and then an integer, and it sends back a string. I don't know what it's going to do. I'm just going to do the declaration so you can see how do we use or how do we declare functions which have parameters that are different types. So let's go look at that declaration. So we would say the word function and then the name of our function, which we said was getErrorMessage, and it takes in a string followed by an integer. Now, if I declared variables in a functional procedure or inside somewhere, they're all the same type. If I was going to do a different type of variable over here, I would then go to a new line and declare, let's say, stemp of type string. Do you see how that looks? We declare the first set of variables, followed by a semicolon, followed by the next set of variables of that type. Okay, we're technically going to be doing the same thing. So I'm going to declare, let's call it stemp of type string. And because I'm now moving to another variable, but it's of a different type, I'm going to put a semicolon. So you separate your different variable types by semicolons. And then I can press, you don't have to press the enter, but I'm just showing you what it looks like. And then let's say num of type integer. Now that looks very similar to how you would declare it in a normal functional procedure if you had variables over here under the var section. So you can declare it all in one line. So I'm going to do it all in one line. So there we go. I have a function that takes in a string, then I have a semicolon, then it takes in an integer. And then it's going to return a string like that. So that's how you would declare a function that has parameters of different types. If this was a function that needed a string and then two integers, then you could just say over here, go inum and inum2 of type integer. So you could do that as well. So that's an example of how you would declare a function if it's got parameters of different variable types. Phew, I know there was a lot to go through, but if you want to go through more videos on functions and procedures, go to our YouTube channel, go look for other information on other content with Delphi, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, find out whenever we post new videos, and remember, don't do it the long way, do it the Mr. Long way.